Hello and welcome to our latest webinar. In this particular session, we're going to be talking about the importance of DMARC, specifically in a Google Workspace environment. You may have seen recently that Microsoft have announced that they're going to be enforcing DMARC on Outlook and Hotmail and all those email systems. With me, I've got Billy from Redsif. We'll tell you a little bit more about Redsif as we go through and the importance of them from a Patronum perspective. But what is DMARC? Again, I'm not going to go into a great deal of detail on this. Why should I when I've got an expert on the webinar? But just to say that DMARC is an email authentication protocol, and it's there specifically to protect your email domain from a reputation perspective. But again, Billy can go into the technical details in a few moments. So recently we've added DMARC to Patronum. And so one of the things that we wanted to get across in this particular session is the importance of DMARC, because we're seeing quite a lot of organizations just not configuring DMARC inside the Google Workspace, and also how you can configure Patronum to show you where you're up to from an email delivery perspective. So the first thing that you would need to do in the Patronum interface is jump in to the Patronum email authentication section. Once you've selected the authentication section, you will be presented with all of the domain names inside your Google Workspace environment. That will include the primary email domain, any aliases that you've got, and also any secondary domains that you have in your environment. And then all you then need to do is select configure, and that will then give you an opportunity to select whichever domain you would like to add to our DMARC checking service. Once you've done that, you will then need to update your DNS with the appropriate information. And just to kind of give you an example of what that would look like, it's a text record. The name is _DMARC. You may need to have additional values if it's a subdomain, etc. But effectively, we are configuring our DMARC to point the receipt emails to the on-DMARC service, which is provided and hosted by Redsif. So this configuration will redirect your email to Redsif. We'll be able to display that information. And as you can see, some of the settings here, you might need to change these over time. And again, Billy will go into those details as to why the P equals none may not be the best option, and how you can move through a much more secure and protected posture when it comes to your email delivery. Once you've configured DMARC, it might take 24 hours before those emails start to arrive in the system. You can then come into Patronum and you'll see the list of systems that are delivering emails on behalf of your particular email domain. And you might see within the list familiar environments like Google Workspace. We've got here Beehive, which is our newsletter. We've also got a number of email systems that we use from a development and a delivery perspective that sends emails to our customers directly from the product. But then we have a number of other systems that we're not quite sure what they are and what they mean and why they are delivering emails from the bestbinlabs.com email system. Now we can go ahead and then start to investigate why Office 365 is delivering emails on our behalf, or why Amazon AWS is delivering emails when we don't actually use Amazon for any of the services that we're providing. So these might well be bad actors delivering rogue emails to potential customers impersonating Best Bin Labs or Patronum. And so we would naturally want to investigate those particular areas. Within Patronum, we're not giving you that level of detail. That's really where the Redshift platform comes in. And so that hands me nicely over to Billy, where we can talk to and about Redshift and how the Redshift platform can help you, again, investigate and get a lot more out of your DMARC configuration. So with that, I'm just going to stop sharing my screen and I'll hand over to Billy.
Thanks so much, Paul. And it's brilliant that Bespin and you, Paul, have built the reports into Patronum, because this is a great starting point. This is a brilliant way for your customers to dip their toe in the water for DMARC, begin to get an understanding of the benefits of DMARC, how to configure DMARC, because it's a DMARC isn't a protocol or a defense that's a set and forget. DMARC is a bit of a journey. It's something that you will get continuous benefit from, but it is something as well that you need to talk a bit about internally. It's something that you need to keep an eye on. You may need to work with stakeholders, you may need to work with suppliers to do, but the first step in it is exactly what you're doing for your customers, Paul, and allowing them to build it into their workflows and begin on that journey. So thank you, and it's absolutely brilliant that you're making that available. Just a little bit about me. I run our customer engineering team, so that's our solutions team here at Redshift. I help our customers make the most of every part of our suite of applications, whether that's on DMARC or our other products, which include domain reputation monitoring, certificate monitoring, and attack surface monitoring. I've been doing this for 20 years. Tons of experience, and having seen the impact of business email compromise firsthand in previous jobs, I really know how important it is that you, as an organization, that you use the tools that are available to you, particularly when it's actually a protocol that is free of charge for you to actually use. Now, there are different ways that you can use it, and I'm going to go on to that. But this is something that's available. You don't have to buy expensive hardware or expensive software to actually use and benefit from DMARC. And I'm going to talk about how easy that is. We've been doing this as an organization for a long time now, and we work with a really wide range of organizations globally, ranging from big well-known brands like ITV, like DigiCert, like Cisco, but we also help thousands of small businesses as well. A ton of experience in web security and email security protocols. So I'm going to talk about why organizations need DMARC to begin with, before we talk a little bit more about what DMARC is and how you can protect your organization with it. The reality is that email is still the biggest security concern for organizations. It's still low-hanging fruit for bad actors, and it is still the first way that a bad actor will try and attack an organization, whether it's trying to get an email into an organization so that they can start a social engineering attack, or whether it's trying to impersonate an organization, impersonate a senior person within an organization. It's still incredibly common. You will see emails in your inbox frequently that are clearly spam, clearly phishing attempts, and they don't always go into spam. And despite the fact that Google, Microsoft, etc., have done a really good job improving how they detect spam filters, it's still very easy for bad actors to bypass those products and get an email into the inbox, and that leads to significant problems. Over 3 or just under 3 billion of losses happened in 2023 because of business email compromise. Okay, 89% of phishing attacks actually start from an impersonation attack from a spoofed email. Okay, and so it's a significant problem. But also there is a high volume of unauthenticated mail that is still being sent out across the internet as well. Now, all that mail, that unauthenticated mail that shouldn't be sent, isn't just phishing, by the way. It's actually legitimate email services. It's actually where someone in an organization may have legitimately set up a new finance system. They may have legitimately set up a new HR system or a new marketing system, which is probably the most common one for this audience. And they've started to send out email, not realizing that actually in order to send email out as your domain, it has to be authenticated using different protocols as well. So this isn't just about protecting against the losses that come from bad actors. Actually, using DMARC correctly will ensure that the legitimate sending services are able to send email correctly, and that those emails will go into the inbox and won't be spammed and won't be rejected, whilst also making sure that the emails that the bad actors are sending won't reach the inbox because they're rejected and or quarantined. Okay. So Paul very kindly pre-text this for me. What is DMARC? Well, DMARC, this slide might look a little bit complicated, but actually it's pretty simple. So DMARC is a wrapper around two protocols that have been around for some time. You've got SPF and you've got DKIM, and those should be fairly familiar terms to those that have joined us today. SPF is just a way of telling people that, yep, this sending service is actually able to send email as me. So if you're using a marketing automation bit of software, you would put a bit of information into your DNS under SPF that would say, yep, this can send email as me. DKIM does something slightly different, but it is very similar. It's verification. It basically goes, yep, it's something that goes in your DNS. It says, yep, this domain name is actually able to send email out. Okay, so there's two protocols, and what DMARC does is it sits on top of SPF and DKIM, and it says, is SPF configured correctly? Is DKIM configured correctly? Yep, it is. That's brilliant. That means that that email should be received by an email service provider and put into the inbox. Now, with DMARC, both SPF and DKIM, it's recommended that those are configured if they are supported by your email service providers that you're using, your email sources that you're using. But often we do find that SPF isn't supported by many, particularly the marketing automation providers. Hence, DMARC actually only needs DKIM to be configured. Okay, it only requires that to be configured correctly. Now, when DMARC does that check for SPF and DKIM and checks that it's actually configured, if it is configured correctly, then the email will be sent. The email service provider will check, yep, brilliant, I can actually receive that email, and that should go into the inbox of the person that it's trying to reach. If, for example, DKIM wasn't configured and SPF wasn't configured, then that's basically telling the email receiver, the email service provider, that the domain name isn't authorized to send that email. Okay, and the mail source, in my example, the marketing automation tool, also isn't authorized to send that email. So because of that, actually, I don't trust this email. So I'm going to reject this email, or I'm going to quarantine this email. And it depends on the DMARC policy and what it says. And I'll go into that in a second. So what DMARC means in a nutshell is that you can actually use it to tell the internet that, yep, this sending source can actually send email as me. And yes, this sending source can send it from my domain. And because you're telling the internet that, the email will go into the inbox. And it means that anyone who's trying to send email as you, who is using a sending source that you've not authorized, or is trying to send it as your domain but doesn't have DKIM configured, it means they will reject or quarantine the email, meaning you will not be phished or impersonated. Now, hopefully that explanation made sense and you're sitting there going, oh, this is important. This seems like a reasonable and pragmatic thing to actually do. So why have I not heard of it, or why have I not done it yet? And it's interesting. It's been around for a long time, since about 2012, DMARC, and adoption, to be quite honest, was pretty low. Starting to climb now, and I'll go on to the reasons for that in a second. But people were just sitting thinking, well, yeah, is it important? Because my emails are still getting delivered without it. My emails are still going into the inbox, okay? And actually, that was because the big email service providers, the people who are actually receiving most emails in the world, Google, Microsoft, at some point Yahoo as well, plus a number of the other smaller players, didn't actually require emails that it was receiving to have DMARC configured. Okay, so that meant that anyone could actually send emails, and generally speaking, it would get into the inbox. Also, adoption was quite low because, and this is like, it's not that DMARC is complicated, but it's another thing for people to understand. Okay, it's another thing for people to actually do, and another thing for people to actually configure. And you're all busy business owners, or you're all busy managers or senior leaders within a business. And if it's something that you're not used to and something that you need to think about doing, then it falls to the, down the priorities, even if it's not that complicated to actually do. And this is why I'm delighted that organizations like Bespin are actually bringing it into their platform, because it takes away a bit of that pain and a bit of the reasons not to do something. Well, Bespin's taking you some of the way there through Patronum, so fantastic. There's a bit of it you don't have to actually do. So there are a few different reasons for that. But also another part of adoption with DMARC is that it was being configured in some cases, but not being used properly. Okay. And what I mean by that is that actually there's a different ways that you can actually configure DMARC. There's 3 ways. So there's reporting, there's quarantine, and there's reject. So people were actually configuring it and then just staying at reporting. Now, Paul and Bespin are building that reporting feature into their product, into Patronum, okay? But that's just the first step in configuring DMARC correctly, because the next step is you want to benefit from the protocol. You want to either use quarantine or preferably use reject, because if you're just reporting, emails will not be rejected and emails will not be quarantined that don't have SPF or DKIM configured. They will still reach the inbox. There is a chance that even if you are using DMARC in reporting only mode, that a phishing email will reach one of your customers' inboxes. And that's something naturally that you want to avoid. And it's why I made a point at the beginning of saying DMARC isn't a set and forget, it's a journey. Okay, it's something that you want to continuously work through to make sure that you can benefit from the true value of the impersonation defense as well. So a large number of senders were for some time configured in reporting only mode. But you'll see here, and actually I didn't get a chance to update this this graph today, which I had hoped to do, but there was a big change that happened towards the end of 2023 into 2024, which was Google and Yahoo both announced that for their consumer email products, that if someone was sending a high volume of emails, and it's not even that high, to be honest, it's 5,000 emails per day. If the email sender isn't using DMARC, then the email will be quarantined or rejected. So they changed their mind and started to say, yeah, actually, we are expecting people who are sending out emails to consumers, so to those at gmail.com addresses and to those at yahoo.com or .co.uk addresses, we are expecting that they must be using DMARC. And if they are not, we will not accept that email. So all of a sudden, organizations that were sending out to consumers, which, let's face it, is most organizations and probably most people on this call are going, oh yeah, well, I need to do this. Otherwise, I'm just wasting time and I'm just wasting money. I'm wasting all that marketing spend if my emails aren't getting to the inbox, or if I cannot guarantee the emails are getting to the inbox. I'm probably going to get complaints from my staff because I can't email out their pay slips to them anymore because they're going into junk. Hotels, in fact, it happened to me today. Actually, I was just saying to Paul, when I joined the call, I was staying in London on Tuesday night in a hotel that I regularly stay at. And I left my toothbrush, actually. And I emailed them this morning saying, I've left my toothbrush. I'm staying there in a couple of weeks again. I was like, can you just keep it for me? And I'll pick it up when I come back. And their reply went into junk because they're not into my junk, because they're not using DMARC. So despite the fact I had emailed them, so I've told my email service provider that I am intending to email this person, because they weren't using DMARC, the email went into junk. Okay, so this put a lot of pressure on organizations to start thinking and go, well, do we actually need to use DMARC? And you can see there that between January 2024 and December 2024, almost 4 million domains started to support DMARC. Okay, so, but there is that trend there that you can see, yeah, the number did increase substantially, but they've went into reporting only mode. Okay, they're not fully benefiting a lot of those domains from quarantine and reject. Now, I've spoken a bit about the approaches, and I'm going to talk about why do people choose these different approaches. So, like I mentioned, the first option actually is to do nothing, right? Not configure DMARC at all. And still 22% of organizations around the globe have no DMARC policy in place. This is a non-optional now, guys, okay? Because of Microsoft announcing that they are doing what Google and Yahoo have done, which is mandate DMARC, this is now a non-optional thing. You cannot get away with not having a DMARC policy, okay? The next option is the reporting only mode. So you'll be able to see who's spoofing you. You'll be able to see, you know, what email sources are trying to send as you, and you'll be able to see what domain names are trying to send as you. This is, as I mentioned, it's a great first step. It's a brilliant step to your journey. It's risen in popularity because of the mandates from Google, Yahoo, and now Microsoft, but it doesn't do anything to stop the emails actually reaching the inbox. So it is a brilliant first step, but it is a first step only. The next option is quarantine or reject. And you do that if you're doing that in a self-managed way. So that means because you can, I said with DMARC, actually, it's a protocol. Anyone can use DMARC, okay? You don't actually need me to help you do it, but you won't benefit fully from it if you don't work and use a tool like on DMARC, okay? Because you will not be able to interpret the data yourself on your own, okay? The chances are, if you do it yourself, if you go to, say you went to quarantine yourself without being able to understand the data, then legitimate sending sources, legitimate email sending sources will be trying to send as you. The emails will be put into junk, will be spammed, and you probably won't know about it because the reporting will not tell you about it. And it's more of a manual effort to find the email. Okay. Now, quite as I said, adoption is climbing. Here's a bit of an insight into where the state of play is as of today. And actually, these stats were done yesterday. I'm going to look at just 2 sectors to tell you where people have got to in these approaches and what they are actually doing. This is the UK charity sector. This is a survey of the 64 top UK charities by income. And as I said, this was done yesterday. Okay. And out of those, it was great to see that actually out of those 64, 2 of those were not using DMARC at all and didn't have it configured, and 62 did. So I was really pleased to see that the vast majority of organisations were doing that, and 2 of the charities I support myself had it configured. So I was very, very happy with that. That was great news. It was, though, a little bit disappointing to see that actually more than half of the organisations weren't using DMARC correctly. So they had started, 29% had started their journey and had went into reporting mode, but hadn't changed. Another 29% had went into quarantine, okay, but hadn't moved into reject yet. And 41.9%, okay, have went into reject. Now, if we go back a step just to look at these approaches, why do people stop? Why do they either go from, not configured to reporting only and stay at reporting only? Why do they go from reporting only to quarantine or reject? Well, it's because they're trying to do it on their own. And it's because they're frightened when they're doing it on their own that if they go to quarantine or if they go to reject from quarantine, that legitimate email sending is going to be blocked, and that the marketing team will complain about email being blocked, or the finance team will talk about email being, or will complain about email being blocked. And that's actually a legitimate fear, right? Because we rely on email. We rely both on transactional email to do our day-to-day business. We rely on transactional email for personal stuff, like when you forget your toothbrush and leave it in a hotel. And we rely on it for more programmatic emails. Okay, we rely on it for marketing emails and that type of thing. So being worried about email not reaching the inbox is a legitimate fear. And this is why people often do not move to quarantine or reject, okay? Because they worry about email not actually being received in the inbox correctly. More concerningly, actually, is the retail sector, particularly because there were some big brands in here, and this is the top 89 UK retailers by revenue. And out of the 89 that I surveyed, 9 had no DMARC policy configured at all, which was very, very odd. And when I looked at the data, there was some big brands in there who didn't have it configured. It was very strange. Some well-known high street brands that when I walk down Argyll Street in Glasgow, the shop is right there. Okay, I see it, and I'm a little bit concerned by that. But also very concerningly, only 53.8% of those who were using DMARC correctly are at reject. Okay, so these are arguably bigger brands than charity, the charity sector, and they're also not using it correctly. And again, the reasons are the same. There's a fear, okay, of emails being sent and not reaching the inbox that's stopping them from fully benefiting from reject and benefiting from the DMARC protocol. And that's why they often just stop at these stages that I mentioned, and why they stop at a step in these approaches. But actually working through these different approaches is not a complicated thing to do when you work with the right people. When you start your journey with Bespin through Patronum and work with trusted advisors like Paul and like Redshift, it's actually very, very simple and very, very straightforward to actually not just get to reject and quarantine, but get to a stage of confidence where you're at what we call DMARC plus, where you're using all the protocols correctly. You're doing it in an automated way, so you're not having to manually identify emails to find where the problems actually sit. You're not having to manually configure all your DNS changes. You're not having to worry about whether you've actually done things correctly or not. You can reach a point where the vast majority of this is actually automated, and it'll be done in such a way that you don't have to worry about it. You'll be notified if something does go wrong, and that all email that pretends to be you, including attacks that exploit the protocol, will not reach the inbox. Okay, but importantly, talking about that fear and talking about the reason why the charity sector and the retail sector, why quite a lot of these organizations aren't at reject. With DMARC Plus, by reaching that stage, you will have confidence that emails being sent will reach the inbox. And that's really, really important. And actually, there are steps to this. This isn't, as I've demonstrated, there are approaches to it. You don't just jump from having no DMARC policy to go into reject, because that will put legitimate sending sources at risk. Okay, the steps to DMARC enforcement, it's a journey, and you need help to actually do that. And this is a typical customer timeline. This was a larger customer who was sending a mail out from a large number of sending domains, but you can see that there are some steps here. And the first step is to do what you are already doing, or what you will be doing with Patronum, which is to get into that reporting only mode. Okay, so use the tools that are available, start reporting. And what reporting does is the first step is it lets you see not only the emails that are sending email illegitimately, but it also lets you see all the legitimate sending sources. Now, importantly, at that point as well, what it will let you see is, are those sending sources correctly configured for SPF or DKIM? Okay, it will give you visibility of, if you turned to reject tomorrow, would these emails be rejected or would they hit the inbox? And that piece is really important, because you need to have that visibility before you move on to the next step. Then once you've got that visibility, you can start the process of going to quarantine and reject incrementally. Again, it's not just binary. You go from no policy to reject. You can actually start with a lower percentage of emails. Okay, you can say, well, 0% of emails will go to reject, so you can enforce the policy, okay, without having the consequences. So you can just monitor what's actually going on. Once you've then got confidence, you can start to increase the percentage of emails that would be rejected, okay, and just do it over time and transition until you reach that point of 100% of emails. So it's not binary. It's not just set and forget. It's not just switch it on and then leave it. With the right advice and with the right help, you can go on that journey to full DMARC Plus to full protection. You can do it in the right way without actually risking your legitimate email sending sources, without taking a risk that the emails will not hit the inbox as part of this. Okay, so it's important to do it properly. And this is why actually Redshift and on DMARC by Redshift is so successful, is because we know how to do this. Holland and Barrett, a name that you're all familiar with, I'm sure, one of our favourite and larger customers. They've been with us for a number of years. They can see through us all the sources sending on behalf of Holland and Barrett. Okay, that visibility allows them to work with all the internal teams that they have to actually ensure that those legitimate sources that I'm talking about are correctly configured. Okay, and it also helps to educate their employees. I mentioned sometimes people will just set up a marketing channel or a marketing automation program using a new source, but maybe just don't understand that it has to be configured correctly. So Holland and Barrett actually do that when they are told by on DMARC that they have a new sending source. They then work with the stakeholder to make sure that SPF and DKIM are correctly configured. Okay, so definitely a journey, but it's a simple journey when you work with the right team and when you work with the right tooling. So how does that actually look in reality? Well, let me give you a very short demonstration. This is the on DMARC dashboard. And immediately what you can see here is up at the top right hand side, I've got complete visibility of all of the emails that are being sent out from my domains. I can see the volume, which allows me to see trends. I can see when there's spikes in email traffic that would either be legitimate email traffic or spam traffic. I can also very easily at a glance see how many of my domains are using DMARC correctly, or how many are on their journey from none right through to reject. I can see what the DMARC, SPF and DKIM pass rates are. This is important because, as I mentioned, it's not black and white. It's not just a case of having SPF configured and DKIM configured. You can have one or other configured as well. Okay. Now, it's easy for you to get started, and your journey with Bespin is started through Patronum. If you do decide to come on board with us, then we will get you into your own platform. And this is how we'll start with you. We'll take your domain, we'll add it into on DMARC, we'll give you the right configuration to put into your DNS. And you can see here my example domain. I've got molly.scott. We will tell you what you need to do to configure it correctly. And then within 24 hours, we'll start to see the DMARC reports coming through. Okay, we'll start to see what emails would pass DMARC, what emails would fail DMARC, and what emails would be quarantined. But most importantly, we see everything that's sending email. Okay, very similar view to the way that Patronum is showing you the data. You can see what is passing SPF, you can see what is passing DKIM, and you can see where the problems will potentially lie. Additionally, with on DMARC, you also get some additional tools. So there's automatic classification. So if we do see a risky email source, one that could be a threat, one that could be sending spam, then we will tell you about it. We'll tell you if there's any malicious IP addresses that are sending email as you. And we'll also tell you about raw IP addresses. So where there's no configuration and we've not been able to identify the sending source or the sending domain name, then we will tell you about that as well. Okay. This tells you how well or otherwise your email sending sources are actually configured. And this all updates when the reporting comes through. There's an additional layer to reporting as well, though, which is called forensics. Okay, so this is called aggregate reports, but you can see here I've got something highlighted called RUF, and that means forensics. Forensics gives me an email by email view of emails being sent that have failed DMARC. And this is particularly useful for identifying phishing attempts, okay, and campaigns. So we actually collect this information from multiple different sources. It is email by email, but it's redacted. So we strip any PII from any emails that may be legitimate and not spamming or phishing attempts. And you can actually see through our forensic reports what the subject line is and where the email actually came from. And you can use that information to try and track if your domain name is actually being phished. Now, as we're collecting all this information, as we're collecting information about all the sending sources, what this is telling us is what the configuration of your domain name needs to look like for those legitimate sending sources. So we're automatically in the background building an inventory of all these different email sources: Amazon, Google, MailChimp, Mailgun, Proofpoint, whatever it actually is. And then what we're doing is we're actually collecting all that configuration. We've got a huge inventory of already of all the normal sending sources, and we're building out what the SPF configuration should be if it's available and what the DKIM configuration should be. We then use that to configure your domain for you using a process called dynamic services. So this is all about automation. So instead of you having to change your configuration within your DNS record every single time you add a new sending service or every single time you change a sending service, with dynamic services through on DMARC, we will know about the new sending service. We will tell you about it. We'll capture the configuration of it, and then you can just tell us, yep, that's the correct configuration, and we'll automatically take care of it all within the application for you as well. So we want you to spend time running your business. We don't want you to spend time dealing with complex configuration. Some other additional features that are very, very useful that are built in as well, though. We know sometimes this stuff, particularly when people are learning about it, may be a little bit tricky. So we've got a number of diagnostic tools that are built in to help you understand how to configure DMARC, SPF, and DKIM correctly. We've got a real-time testing tool, which is called Investigate. So you can send an email from your domain to the on DMARC inbox, and we will tell you how well it's configured. Okay, and actually there's a version of this available on our website that you can actually use free of charge as well. We've got a domain analyzer, so you can put a domain name in and it will give you a full breakdown of the SPF, the DMARC, the DKIM configuration of it as well. And we've also got IP lookup tools, so you can check the reputation of IP addresses and an SPF checker as well. Finally, two other protocols, that are built in that are a little bit further along the line sometimes in terms of the maturity journey for organizations, but we do have BIMI and we do have MTA-STS built in. BIMI in particular, really, really interesting tool, and you can have a look at BIMI in more detail on our website. But what it means is if you're sending an email into a consumer's inbox, into a customer's inbox, you can actually make sure that your company logo is shown against that email in the customer's inbox. Okay, it used to be quite restricted. It used to only be available to organizations that had a trademarked logo. But now there's another method of doing it, which means you don't have to have your logo trademarked anymore. Okay, that's all built in to the Redshift platform. And then finally, MTA-STS is built in. If you don't know what that is, that's a tool that protects you against certain types of inbound attacks as well, and that's all built into the platform. So what I've been able to demonstrate there is actually how simple it is to not only get insight into your sending domains, but collect all that information and configure your sending domains to actually begin your journey and move from reporting through to quarantine and through to reject by A, knowing what the configuration of your domains is, B, knowing what email is legitimately sending as you, and C, what the configuration of those sending sources should be. So I hope that was interesting, and if you do have any questions, then you can please do ask.
Thank you, Billy, for that. That was extremely useful. So that just leaves me to conclude. So if you are a Patronum customer, please go ahead and get DKIM set up. Very, very straightforward, very easy to do, and you will start your journey. You'll be able to see who's sending on your behalf. And if you just want to do things manually and you want to go through that pain yourselves, then you can move through the journey just by doing that yourselves. However, it's highly recommended that you get in contact, and we can then upgrade you to the Redshift platform, where you'll be able to interrogate those particular emails and see exactly what's going on from an email deliverability perspective, and also from a reputation point of view. And as Billy mentioned, BIMI seems to be a pretty decent standard that's now coming about. I see it as the equivalent to the blue tick from a Twitter X perspective, because not only do you get your email has a logo in there, you also get, when you get delivered inside of Gmail, things like a blue tick that says, yes, this is definitely come from this organization. So again, it just adds that extra level of credibility. So the websites are patronum.io and redshift.io or redshift.com. They both work. The details, as you can see on how you spell both of those, are on the screen now. And with that, I would like to thank you all for your time, and yeah, stay safe.
Thanks very much, everyone.